On November 18th, 2005, the city of Bradford, West Yorkshire, would witness a tragedy that sent shockwaves across the nation. A police officer, a mother, daughter, and friend, would not return home from her shift. Her name was Sharon Beshenivsky. To many, she wasn't just a name in the headlines. She was a loving mother of three, a devoted partner, and a colleague known for her kindness and courage. Sharon's story begins long before that fatal day, rooted in family values, determination, and her calling to serve the community. Welcome to the Crime Documentary. Born in 1976 in West Yorkshire, Sharon grew up in a modest household that valued hard work and honesty. From an early age, she was described as caring, dependable, and full of warmth, qualities that naturally drew her toward professions centered around helping others. As she grew older, Sharon balanced her personal life with her ambition to provide for her family. She married Paul Beshenivsky, and together they raised 3 children. Sharon was a devoted mother, often described as someone who lived for her kids, juggling the duties of parenting with the desire to serve something larger than herself. It wasn't until her 30s that Sharon pursued her dream career, policing. Unlike many recruits who joined straight out of school or university, Sharon came into the force later in life, bringing with her maturity, patience, and a natural ability to connect with people. She joined West Yorkshire Police, working in the Bradford district, one of the busiest and most challenging regions in the county. Colleagues recalled her as a breath of fresh air, kind, approachable, but also resilient and ready to face the demands of frontline policing. Bradford in the early 2000s was a city of contrasts, a vibrant mix of communities and cultures, but also an area struggling with crime, gang activity, and rising levels of violent incidents. For officers like Sharon, every day on shift meant uncertainty. But Sharon didn't see policing as just a job. To her, it was a responsibility, an opportunity to make a difference, to keep people safe, and to bring comfort to those in distress. Her colleagues described her as calm under pressure, compassionate with victims, and always willing to volunteer for difficult calls. Though she was still relatively new to the force, Sharon was quickly earning the respect of her peers. Outside the uniform, Sharon was family through and through. She loved spending weekends with her children, attending school events, cooking meals, and creating memories that her loved ones would treasure forever. Her youngest daughter, only 4 years old at the time, would later grow up with just faint memories of her mother. For Sharon, the biggest sacrifice of policing was the time taken away from her family. But she accepted it, because she wanted to build a safer future, not just for her children, but for every child growing up in Bradford. By 2005, Sharon had just under a year of service in the force. She was still considered a rookie by some, but her colleagues saw her dedication shining through. She was partnered with PC Teresa Milburn, another officer with a strong sense of duty. Together, they were a solid team, professional yet approachable, able to diffuse situations with empathy, but prepared to stand their ground when danger arose. Their bond was built on trust, something vital for officers working in unpredictable circumstances. Tragically, Sharon's story would be defined not just by her life, but by her death. At the age of 38, she became the 7th female police officer in British history to be killed in the line of duty. But before we reach that devastating chapter, it's important to understand the full picture. The devoted mother, who balanced nappies and night shifts, the colleague who lifted morale with her presence, and the officer who stood as a symbol of courage in the face of danger. November 18th, 2005, started like any other day. Sharon kissed her children goodbye, put on her uniform, and prepared for what she thought would be another ordinary shift. But fate had something else in store. By that evening, Sharon's name would be etched into UK policing history, and her family's world would never be the same again. November 18th, 2005, was supposed to be an ordinary day. Sharon Beshenivsky, just under a year into her policing career, had started her shift like countless others. She paired up with PC Teresa Milburn, her colleague and trusted partner. The two officers were dispatched to what seemed to be a routine call, an alarm at a local travel agency in Bradford. What neither Sharon nor Teresa knew was that this was no ordinary alarm. Inside the travel agency, a violent armed robbery was unfolding. At around 3:25 p.m, staff at Universal Express Travel triggered a panic alarm. The call came through to dispatch, and Sharon and Teresa were nearest to respond. They drove to the location, unaware that the suspects, armed, masked, and desperate, were waiting inside. As Sharon and Teresa approached, they were met with sudden and shocking violence. Within seconds of stepping out of their vehicle, both officers were shot at point-blank range with a submachine gun. PC Teresa Milburn was critically injured but survived. PC Sharon Beshenivsky was not as fortunate. At just 38 years old, she was struck in the chest. She collapsed on the pavement, radio still clutched in her hand. Her final words, spoken through the radio, were chilling in their simplicity. "I'm shot." The shooting of two police officers in broad daylight sent shockwaves across Bradford. Sirens echoed as emergency services raced to the scene. Passers-by watched in horror as officers and paramedics fought to save Sharon's life. Despite desperate attempts at resuscitation, Sharon Beshenivsky was pronounced dead at 3:53 p.m. Her partner, Teresa, was rushed to hospital with life-threatening injuries. The streets of Bradford became a crime scene. Forensic teams swarmed the area, and senior detectives knew instantly they were dealing with a targeted attack. And the killers of a police officer were on the run. The murder of a police officer is rare in the UK. The public was stunned. The media reported the story within hours, spreading nationwide. Who would carry out such a reckless, brutal attack, and why? The investigation launched immediately. Detectives from West Yorkshire Police knew time was critical. The robbers had fled the travel agency with money and passports, but they left behind crucial evidence. CCTV footage revealed the masked men escaping in a silver vehicle. Within days, that car was traced, abandoned, but inside were links to a group of men with ties to organized crime. The suspects were identified as a gang of Somali and Asian men, including brothers and associates who had planned the robbery. A nationwide manhunt began. Borders were alerted. Some suspects were believed to have fled overseas. The UK's Serious Organised Crime Agency, SOCA, joined the hunt, and Interpol was informed. This was no longer a local case, it was international. Over the following months, arrests were made across the UK. Several gang members were captured in London, others were extradited from abroad. The ringleader, Mustaf Jama, was tracked down in Somalia. His brother, Yusuf Jama, and associate Muzaka Shah were also arrested. Their trials would reveal the shocking details of Sharon's murder. The gang had targeted Universal Express Travel because it was known to handle large sums of money. They expected an easy robbery. Instead, they were confronted by two unarmed officers. Witnesses described how the men showed no hesitation in pulling the trigger. It was calculated, ruthless. In 2007, several members of the gang were found guilty of murder, attempted murder, and firearms offences. The sentences were severe. Life imprisonment, with minimum terms of 35 years for the ringleaders. But for Sharon's family, no sentence could bring her back. The murder of PC Sharon Beshenivsky struck a deep chord across Britain. She was the first female officer killed in the line of duty in the UK in 20 years. Her death reignited debates about police safety, resources, and the dangers faced by officers daily. Thousands attended her funeral. Colleagues lined the streets in full uniform, saluting as her coffin passed. Prime Minister Tony Blair expressed condolences. Leaders across the country paid tribute. But perhaps the most powerful voices were those of her children, left without their mother on what should have been an ordinary Friday afternoon. PC Teresa Milburn survived the shooting, but her life was forever changed. The physical injuries healed with time, but the emotional scars remained. She spoke of the trauma of that day, the sound of gunfire, and the moment she realized Sharon was gone. For Sharon's family, the loss was unbearable. Her children grew up without their mother. Her husband was left to raise them alone. Colleagues said they would never forget the laughter and warmth Sharon brought to the force. Nearly 2 decades on, Sharon's name remains etched into British policing history. Her story is taught to new recruits as a reminder of the dangers officers face and the sacrifices made in the line of duty. Memorials have been held annually. Plaques and dedications ensure her courage is never forgotten. The murder of PC Sharon Beshenivsky is more than a crime story. It is a story of duty, sacrifice, and the price of service. Sharon lived as a mother, a friend, and an officer. She died protecting her community. Her legacy is not just in the sorrow of her loss, but in the inspiration she left behind for those who continue to serve. Like and subscribe for more real crime stories. Turn on notifications because the next case might be even darker.